Good afternoon, everybody. And we've got a tremendous amount of fun stuff going on all at the same time tonight. Matt, you got to charge up that remote control, man, because you're going to need to be flipping back and forth all night long. There we got baseball, World Baseball Classic final, and we got the first of the NCAA tournament games all coming out as tonight.
Yeah. The start of really what is going to be a great week of sports. I'm down here at the Valspar. That'll start off this weekend as well. It's a really good weekend. And you started it off with the World Baseball Classic, and this is really, when you look at it, the grand scheme of things, if it was not going to be Japan coming out of that side of the bracket, I think Team Venezuela was probably your second best option in terms of who could meet in this World Baseball Classic final. And it's a game really where you've got yet again another star-studded lineup in Team Venezuela, up and down. That's MLB talent that they're going to toss out at all 9 positions. Obviously, headlined by Ronald Acuna Jr. in the leadoff spot, and I think the only disappointing part about this matchup is really going to be the pitching matchup.
Mm-hmm. There is a very good chance. I'm not going to say it's not a very good chance. I would put serious money on the fact that tonight in Miami there will be way more Venezuelan fans than there will be U.S. fans. It'll be like a Venezuelan home game.
Yeah, I would probably, if there was a line on that and there was anything close to even odds, I would probably sell everything I have and go throw it all on that. I don't see a world where the U.S. has more fans. I think they know that they're going to be walking into a bit more of a hostile environment, and that's something that they're going to have to work against. It's something that definitely doesn't play in their favor. But on the bright side is they do have a lot of really good right-handed bats against the left-hander in Eduardo Rodriguez that's going for Team Venezuela tonight.
I'm looking at 3 decisions that I think that's going to be crucial to whether or not what Mark DeRosa does tonight. I'm going to start off with catcher. Who do you start, Cal Raleigh or Will Smith?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Will Smith. It's a situation where he's really just kind of played better. It's not a knock on Cal Raleigh as much as Cal over the years has really taken a bit of time to acclimate when it comes to gearing up throughout spring training. He hasn't been there yet in terms of his performance in the World Baseball Classic, and Will Smith has delivered some hits. So that has been a big plus in the favor of Will Smith. I will say the one downside, or what I would be concerned with in terms of Will Smith, is his defense against the Dominican Republic, specifically having some pass balls. He had some good moments,
right,
but in those later innings, he had a couple of them that got away from him, and that makes me a little nervous in terms of what he's going to give me behind the dish tonight.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that you've got Cal is a better, defensive catcher, but he hasn't got a hit yet. And Will has gotten 4. And so, do you sacrifice defense for hitting, or where do you go with that? Honestly, to be honest, I'm going to have to go with Smith because I just think he's a better catcher. From a standpoint of, is he as defensive, better catcher than Raleigh? No, but he's not bad. I mean, we're not talking about a significant fall off here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the reason that Will Smith is probably going to get the nod, is just because he has had the better bat throughout this World Baseball Classic. And if you're Mark DeRosa and somebody who has been questioned his decision-making, it felt like he threw out his best lineup last time, and it panned out for him. So I think it's a situation where they're absolutely going to be better off starting Will Smith at catcher tonight. And maybe it's also, honestly, it's a really big value to have a bat like Cal Raleigh sitting on the bench that can play
Sure.
the value position of
Mhm.
catcher, and he
Mhm.
can plug and play if need be.
Right. Absolutely. The other thing too is remember, I, and I think that this is undervalued at times, and that is we're talking about big game, you know, uh, big game knowledge and big game handling, right? Will's been in the World Series the last 2 years, so I mean, he definitely understands the big game, and that's not to say that Cal doesn't, but there's that kind of importance, I think, in knowing what's going on, and that I think that's going to help them. So I agree. Now here's one for you. It might be a little tough one. I'm going to go with Gunnar Henderson at third base and sit Alex.
Yeah, I like that pick as well. Gunnar Henderson doesn't exactly struggle with left-handers, and it's again a situation where you're once again playing the hot hand. And when you
Mhm,
have the riches that the U.S. team has in terms of their position players, it's something that you can afford to go out there and try.
mhm,
Um, and again, you have a situation. I know they're starting Eduardo Rodriguez, who is the left-hander.
mhm,
But it's a situation where maybe if Gunnar Henderson's not having a great night later in the game, and you get that lefty on lefty matchup, and he's been struggling, then you can put Alex Bregman in there. You can afford a substitution later, and it's something where again you're sticking with the hot hands, and I think it's something that Mark DeRosa did last game, and it's the correct choice.
Here's though one thing, and this is you talking about Cal Raleigh coming off the bench, right? Alex Bregman against Eduardo Rodriguez is 9 for 27 in career wise, 3 home runs, and he's walked 5 times. Now Gunnar Henderson's only faced him twice, and he's 0 for 2. But I'm going to go with Gunnar Henderson anyway, because as you say, you can always plug and play a Bregman. Coming off camera is not a bad situation there.
Yeah, I, and I will say the knowledge that I was unaware of Alex Bregman's career numbers, but that is a really good average to have, and
Mm-hmm.
so that does if you're Mark DeRosa, that's going to make that decision a lot more difficult moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. But I do agree with you in thinking that I still believe Gunnar Henderson is the correct pick. He's a guy that just feels like he is already fully into his baseball action and his baseball routine so
Mm-hmm.
far.
All right. Next up, my last suggestion on being manager of the team: Pete Crow Armstrong, Byron Buxton in center field. Who do you go with?
It's Byron Buxton. Pico Armstrong has I think he's batting somewhere in the career 118 against left-handed pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
He's not gotten to a place where he is comfortable in that lefty on lefty matchup. I
Mm-hmm.
know he gives you really good defense, but Byron Buxton is now healthy again. And when Byron Buxton has been healthy, he has given fantastic defense in center field throughout his career. I don't think it's something where you're going to plug Byron Buxton into center field and immediately feel some kind of a drop off. So I think that's the correct decision to have him start in center field.
There are all kinds of stats, right? One thing that jumped out at me from Byron Buxton, I mean, I knew he was fast, right? I mean, anybody who watches baseball knows Byron Buxton's fast. The stat that blew me away was he can go in. He basically goes 30.2 feet a second.
That's yeah, yeah. He can move, and
That's getting there.
yeah, and that's a part of his game. I think people tend to forget the type of player that he was prior to really when that injury bug just bit him, and really hasn't let him go. Um, is what kind of an athlete Byron Buxton was in center field. His defense, his speed, really a five-tool player in terms of what he brought to the game. So he is that kind of player. Is he going to be the same kind of player that he once was? No, he's not. But he still has all those tools available, and he can be that type of hitter. And he is that kind of. Honestly, he brings a better power threat to that lineup than Pico Armstrong does, even if it was a right-handed pitcher.
Well, that's going to be fun, folks. It's going to be a fun game. So, who wins tonight?
I would be hard pressed to pick against the Americans tonight. Their lineup is just deeper, and their bullpen is better. I think that's going to be the biggest thing because I don't know how much of these two lineup I don't know how much you can trust Nolan McLean and Eduardo Rodriguez and how deep they're going to be able to go into this baseball game. Obviously, if Eduardo Rodriguez gives the Venezuelans a good, strong, 5 innings, that is going to significantly increase their chances to win because it's going to be who's getting to that bullpen first because I think the U.S. bullpen is significantly better than the Venezuelan bullpen is. They have a lot more depth. I think when DeRosa was speaking, talking about the availability out of the bullpen, Garrett Whitlock, a guy who shut down the Dominicans in the 8th inning, he will be available. Mason Miller will be available again. I think the only guy that pitched in that semifinal matchup out of the pen that's not going to be available is David Bednar. So they have the type of bullpen that can get them through this game with the lineup that they have to pair with it as well.
Okay, let's move tonight to basketball. And we're first up is really Texas versus North Carolina State. And, the winner of that game gets BYU in the West region. Texas enters this game, with your classic Longhorn toughness. I mean, they're a physical team. They're strong rebounding. The backcourt is, they start off slow, but they can heat up fast. We don't know, how they're going to. They really are a team that, plays a lot of catch up. Okay, they get themselves in pickles slow, at the early part of the game, but for reasons of talent, they're able to come back in those games. NC State, on the other hand, is a roster that loves to play by pace. I mean, they push the ball, they force turnovers, and they make you uncomfortable. If they can make Texas, if they can keep them out of their game, it could be trouble for Texas tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And Texas is a team that's been up and down throughout the season. They hit a stride really in the middle of that conference schedule and had really kind of catapulted themselves to where they were looking to be safely in the tournament. They did not finish the season as strong, and that's why they now find themselves in this play-in game. So there is that. And then you on the other side, you have North Carolina State, and they have a strong roster. A lot was made about, Will Wade made comments about when you play Van Allen Lubin, I think it's 25-plus minutes. He averaged 15 and 8. And throughout this season, when he played 25-plus minutes, he gave him 15 and 8. So you would assume that that's probably going to be a number that you're getting out of him tonight as well. I really, really don't know who's going to come out on top because these are two conferences that we talked about yesterday when we were running through the bracket in terms of we have questions about the depth of the ACC and the SEC.
Right.
And we don't really know what the depth looks like on either of those two teams. I think all things considered, when you look at the depth of these two, I think I'm going to lean towards the depth of the SEC and probably pick Texas in this game.
I would say the same thing. I think on pure talent alone, not playing as a team, but on pure talent alone, Texas has, the talent to do it. If they can, as I said before, they can't afford to do what they've done in the past, which is, kind of mess around in the first half and fall behind and then, catch up just before the halftime and then take over late in the game and win a game. I don't think if they get down and because NC State plays good defense and they like to play pace. I still think Texas is a better team. Would it surprise me if North Carolina State won? No, but I do think Texas is going to win. They're a better team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I kind of fall back on is there is the talent. It feels like is kind of in Texas' favor. Sean Miller is a really good basketball coach with what he's done there, and it's a situation where it just feels again. I trust the depth of the SEC just a little bit more than I trust the depth of the ACC this year. I think they were a little bit more top loaded in terms of their conference.
Okay, the other one, UMBC and Howard. Now, it's UMBC's historic upset of Virginia in 2018 that makes everybody take a look at them and go, this UMBC team, is a historic team. It's a legacy that is going to follow them, which is great if you're UMBC. Howard is a balanced team. They play absolutely solid defense. They don't rely on one star. They're very much a team-oriented team. Basically, what you got in UMBC is you got a group of really talented Baltimore, Washington, middle Maryland, I guess would be the best way of saying it. Very talented young ball players who will, there's not going to be many UMBC, or for that matter, Howard players that are going to head on into the NBA. But what they are going to do is they play as a team. And so I think this game's going to be entertaining because I think that both these teams play with a great deal of passion and a great deal of discipline. And you're going to see some just wild shooting. I mean, these guys will pull up from the logo and start shooting. They have no trouble with that. I don't think either one of them is going to be the upset, team that goes on and beats, the top seed when they get to Michigan. But it might be a very entertaining game because of the fact that these two teams are not teams that they're not teams that rely on the portal and all that. They rely on playing together for as long as they can.
Yeah, and you look at the statistics. I actually have them pulled up here. UMBC, in terms of their scoring offense, they're just a much more efficient offense than Howard is. They rank 62nd in terms of field goal percentage. They shoot 47%, and they shoot 36% from behind the arc compared to Howard, who shoots 46 and 34%. Their rankings are just a little bit better. So they're better in the net rank. They score a couple more points a game, give up just a little bit less, or they actually just give up a little bit less. Howard actually scores about one more point a game than they do. Very evenly matched teams in terms of everything, but they played a little bit better of a schedule. They're a little bit more battle tested, and I think more than anything, they've got that history, and honestly, I think more than anything, it just leads the mind to want to pick them.
Yeah. We can take a little brief look at tomorrow's games. We talked about this yesterday when we were going through it. Miami of Ohio has a chip on their shoulder, as I said yesterday, about the size of a Toyota. And they're playing SMU. I think Miami of Ohio is a very, very talented team that has been disrespected, and I don't want to play a team that's got that kind of. I think I'll be honest. I'm going to tell you right now. I think Miami of Ohio is a team that literally could make a Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think it's possible, and I fully agree with what you're talking about in terms of the chip on their shoulder, and they do and probably should feel disrespected by the position that they're being put in headed into this tournament. I think on the flip side of that is when you look at this game, there's not going to be a soul in the country that's talking about SMU or really even picking SMU to win the basketball game.
Right.
So for as large as Miami's chip is on their shoulder, I think SMU has a real good opportunity here to look at this and go, hey, like, nobody's picking us. Nobody really cares about us.
Right.
They just think we're here to play Miami, Ohio, and kind of give them a launching point to their Cinderella story here. And I think that's something that they could use, but at the same time, SMU away from home in the last 5, 0-5.
Right.
That's something that's very real. That's going to play a factor. They don't shoot the ball as well as Miami, Ohio does either. They don't score it as well. And I know they played a different schedule, but they give up more points than Miami of Ohio does as well.
You know, you got two teams. I agree with you. And from a standpoint, you got two teams that are pissed off that one of them is you disrespected me and we want to get it. And the other one is, well, all the world wants Miami of Ohio to win. And they don't like us. So there's enough bulletin board material for those two teams to pen up probably 4 or 5 bulletin boards. But I do, you know, every year there's one team that makes it to the Sweet 16 that shouldn't make it there. And I think that given how Miami's played this year, they might be that team. Am I disrespecting SMU because of it? Probably. I can live with that, SMU fans. Really, I can. So yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to watch that game. I know nothing about Prairie View A&M, other than where it's located. Lehigh plays in the Patriot League, and a lot of times, to be honest, the Patriot League is undervalued for what we talked yesterday about Penn from the Ivy, and Lehigh's kind of like, you know, the Patriots kind of like the poorer cousin of the Ivy League, right? A lot of incredibly good schools, a lot of really high, you know, high intelligence in those universities. You know, it's going to be a fun situation. Lehigh and Prairie View again. They don't do a lot of portal work, and that's what you see is a team that has been on the court, played together. Rosters haven't changed much, and it should be a very interesting team. Lehigh, you know, they're efficient, they're smart, they don't make mistakes. They have a tendency of pulling off big moments, you know, in tournaments before. All you have to do is ask Duke about that one. Lehigh likes to, Prairie View is they play good defense, but they're not deep. They're, you know, they probably got 4 or 5 players that are solid players, and down that bench gets real thin real fast.
Yeah. In terms of Prairie View, their strength of schedule was 350th in the country.
How many
really
teams
bad.
are there?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how much lower it could have gotten. In terms of their field goal percentage, they're ranked 234th in the country. 3-point shooting percentage, 208th in the country. So they don't necessarily do a good job of that. But the interesting stat when I flip it around on Lehigh here to the other side is they're 2-2 in their last 10 games that are away from, or they're 2-2 in their last 4 games that are away from home. But they score 73.2 points per game and give up 74. I don't know how they went 18-16 and 11-7 in the Patriot League, giving up more points per game than they score, but they've done it. But they overall, you look at the metrics, and it's stuff that heavily favors Lehigh in terms of their net ranking, their strength of schedule, and really the opponents that they've played.
Well, and then they'll get on a plane, fly down to Tampa, and get beat by Florida.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what these teams are vying for. I
Right.
mean, as much
They're
as
vying for a trip to Florida, nice couple days in Tampa, and then fly home on Friday.
yeah, which makes you feel bad for the for UMBC, the winner of the UMBC and Howard game, because man,
Mhm.
they're not flying to Florida. They're not flying to sunny Tampa. They're flying to Buffalo.
Ugh.
And so it's a tough draw to have to go play that play-in game in Dayton, Ohio, and
Right.
then flip it right back around, and now you get to go play number 1 seed Michigan in Buffalo, New York.
Man, it's an hour and a half flight.
Yeah, at least it's short.
Yeah. I'm assuming at that point. I'm assuming at that point that the snow will be away from the airport so they can land. Um, I know that there was a big thing made last night about the University of South Florida and the other schools got into Buffalo just before a storm blew through there. A storm that affected both you and I yesterday. As a matter of fact, it knocked me off the air here because of the wind and the tough weather. So everybody got into Buffalo last night, except for obviously the winner of this game tonight. And it is we talked about travel and we talked about how important it is. And so most of these teams get into the tournament, and it's they try to get them there a couple of days ahead of time for two reasons. One, to acclimate them, time wise, in that regard, and obviously for them to hold practices and to get everybody to get a chance to get interviewed. Um, um, I don't think that a lot of people realize that the money that each team will receive, the first round games tonight and tomorrow, each of those teams will receive the $1 million that everybody else in the first round received, and it goes to the conferences. Okay, and so all the money goes to the conferences. The conference is responsible for picking up the tab for flying these teams to wherever they are. And I'm talking about all the teams, not just, these teams playing tonight. So from the moment you win a conference championship, the university themselves basically has a backseat to the conference who arranges everything. They arrange hotels, they arrange the flights, they arrange everything, that practice times, everything that goes into it. And of course, the host universities are in charge of putting together whatever is necessary, where they need, what they need to do for practice situations, practice courts, where can they play. Um, you're in Tampa, so the University of South Florida is the host team for that region, and so one of the teams practicing, or two of the teams will be practicing at USF's auditorium, the Yingling Center, and then two of them will practice at the at the arena downtown.
Yeah.
So there's practice times, there's all that stuff. There's no question about it. They can say whatever they want to. There is a disadvantage of having to play these play-in games.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is in terms of the travel and talking about practice. It's definitely something that puts some of these schools at a disadvantage when you have to play these playing games. Now, there is the flip side argument to it, where you can look at it as a disadvantage, or you could look at it as, if you win this game, you have the ability to kind of build momentum, and that's really something that you're looking more towards these 11 seeds. And there's something where you can build that momentum heading into the next game that they're playing. Like, I think if I'm Tennessee, I'm not going to be happy that Miami of Ohio or SMU has a good win under their belt heading into this bracket, because then they get a day of rest and they only have an hour and a half flight.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a little more fresh on their legs than you are. These
Right.
teams, well, at least Miami of Ohio, I think played a little bit later into their conference tournament than
Yeah.
Tennessee did. Actually, now that I think about it, I think they both
They
had.
got beat in the first round, I thought.
I think they both exited on the same day, just the way
Yeah.
the bracket scheduling fell.
Mhm.
So you're on a little bit less of an even playing field in terms of that. So I think it's something that can be used as an advantage for these 11 seeds. The 16 seeds, it's just you're spending more money on travel and kind of just flying these kids around for what's most likely going to be a, I guess, kind of a show of a performance.
Well, they get the paychecks with the
Yeah.
conference, and that that $1 million goes a long way in these smaller conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what some of these smaller conferences are. They rely on some of these
Sure,
on some of these paychecks.
they gotta have it. Yeah, let's let's flip for a minute over to the NIT. Um, the big news out of the NIT, which, by the way, for those of you who are fans of the NIT, ESPN has all their games on the NIT. Last year, 18 Power Four conference teams played in the NIT. This year, it's 4. They're after the season's over, it's looking more and more kind of like college football. That these guys they don't want to play anymore. They want to work on recruiting, work on what they've got in the portal, and just decide, hey, the NIT isn't the NCAA. You have to, if you go to those games or you host those games, I mean, it's not like the NCAA is picking up the tab on this, or the conference is picking up the tab. You're picking up the tab on this. And
Yeah.
so these teams are saying, do I really want to get involved in this tournament? And what am I getting out of it? I'm getting extra games, but is the extra games worth it? And it's kind of like, as I said, it's kind of like the bowl games now. What the NIT for years was a very, prestigious tournament. If you didn't make one, at one point in time, the NIT was even more important to a lot of teams than the NCAA tournament back in the 50s and 60s. But as they moved later into the 60s, 70s, and beyond, the NCAA became a much bigger situation. The NIT still had its cachet, but now I just think people are at the point where they're going, let's take a look at the investment versus the return on investment, and it's not there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the teams that is playing is Auburn this year.
I knew I would have bet that you were going to bring them up.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they were one of the teams that was playing, especially when you have teams. You mentioned the power conference teams not playing in it. Like there's teams like Belmont. Belmont opted not to play in the NIT this year. So it's definitely something now that the I guess the value is not being seen as much, and it's tougher to be seen now because what once could be used as value in terms of maybe building your team chemistry, kind of getting better, looking forward to next year, is you don't know if you have next year, especially not with you may only have one holdover from your roster looking over to the next year. So it's definitely something where the value has diminished on that side of things as well. Like if you're Auburn and you're Stephen Pearl and that program, I'm very curious where they see the plus, aside from it just being a purely optics move, because it's not something where that roster is going to look very similar next year. It's going to look nothing like it looks this year, especially if they pour money into that program like I would expect them to, and kind of overhauling the transfer portal. So I think it's an interesting decision. It's something that stinks because the NIT tournament was a really good alternative to the NCAA tournament. It was a very well respected tournament, like you were talking about, and it stinks to see things go this way. But again, a lot of the value that the NIT once had, it's gone. There's those extra games don't give you as much value if you're these lower level programs, especially if you're having to pay your own way.
Yeah, and the other thing too is remember that the higher seeds for the first two rounds get to host the games.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things where you're sitting there going, okay, wait a minute, I'm paying my way, you know, and maybe we win, but if we win, then we have to go to somebody else's, because again, if you're a lower seed, you you you've got you got to work your way through that gauntlet to get to Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and I think that is probably some of the value that Auburn saw in is the fact that they are hosting the tournament. So they're a host city. It will bring them revenue to the city. It will bring revenue to the school via the tourism and stuff like that. So that's a plus when you're being able to host some of these tournament games.
I would agree with you, except if I'm an Auburn basketball fan, I'm not going to an NIT basketball tournament game.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the real flip side of things is when you are in these Power Four programs, there are expectations, especially at Auburn,
Mhm.
especially with the success they had under Bruce Pearl over these last, really
Right.
5, 6, 7, 8 years. So they've gotten used to that success. They've gotten a couple Final Four runs in there. They made it to the national championship. So being in the NIT tournament is a failure, I would say, for those fans, and it feels like a failure for those fans. And it's tough to show up for that.
You know, it, and I feel bad because again, at one point in time, the NIT was a fantastic tournament, and it has just continued to, because of the expansion of the NCAA tournament to a field of 68. You know, the teams that didn't make that 68 team field, are usually the first ones asked to play in the NCAA tournament. I'm sorry, in the NIT tournament, and they, you know, for the most part, as I said, there were 18 teams last year, and I think what they're seeing right now is, I'm really not interested in paying my way to get a participation trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what you get at the end of it just is not. It just doesn't have the value.
Nope. And the amount of time, effort, and money that you're spending
Hmm.
um, to go and play a game. Now, look, if Belmont hosted the game, they probably would sell the place out.
Yeah.
They're not.
Nope.
So, I mean, I get it. If I'm going into the Lions Den, right? If I'm a smaller school and I'm going to, because the paydays aren't anywhere near what an NCAA tournament is. You're lucky if you cover expenses in some of these cases.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely something where, especially when these budgets are really getting tested now with
Uh huh.
NIL and all this stuff, things are tighter financially than they ever have been before. And
Right.
so when they get tight like that, it's one of those expenses where you look at it and go, well, why? Like, like what are we getting out of this? Does it benefit our basketball program moving forward?
Right.
No, not really, because we don't know what roster turnover is going to look like.
Hmm.
So you don't get that aspect. You're not getting a financial aspect. It's not really gonna, give you any goodwill with your fans either. So it's something where you just don't really get the plus, and all you see is red numbers on your books.
Well, the other thing, and we talked about the bowl games, right? A lot of the kids that, a lot of the reasons why these teams are not going is because they're not sure what the roster is if they went.
Yeah. Yeah, you have all kinds of. I mean, that's when you start talking about opt outs in this
Mhm.
NIT tournament, especially for a team like Auburn. Auburn is a team that has guys that have NBA prospects on that roster.
Right.
And at that point, if I'm a guy on Auburn and I'm looking at this NIT tournament, understanding what it is and what it means, I don't know if I want to play in that thing. I don't know if I want to go out there and risk injury, potentially hurt. Maybe I'm not going to be a first round pick, but maybe I'm going to be an early day 2 pick. And that's something that is extremely valuable. And that means something more than, risking injury and potentially not even getting drafted. This isn't the NFL where you have 7 rounds. You've got 60 picks of this thing, and that's it.
I do remember on Sunday or Monday morning, I'm not going to mention the team because it wouldn't be fair, but when they declined the invite to the NIT, the coach was asked about it, and he goes, "I'm not sure that if we counted the manager and the cheerleaders, we could put together a roster."
Yeah, and that's where your issue lies, really, and that's another reason why you're going to see these teams decline these invites, is because they may not be able to field these rosters.
I know that the bowl games now are freaked out totally because of the opt-outs, right? I mean, you have teams that come in, like we had Penn State and Clemson, right? Go to New York to play in the at Yankee Stadium, and the only thing that was Penn State and Clemson was the jerseys. Both of them had opt-outs that were, I think Clemson opted like almost 30 guys off the team. And Penn State was right behind them in the 20s.
Yeah, and when you're combining those opt-outs with transfers as well,
right?
You get rosters that, you're right, they by name and jersey alone, that's what they are, because they are nothing like what you saw for those first 12 games of the season in football.
Yeah, so you're kind of, if you are a company sponsoring a bowl game and it's going to be on ESPN and you want to, you want eyeballs to watch it, it's kind of like a bait and switch. You're getting a team, but you're not getting the team that you went after. I mean, we can go back to your boy Kirby Smart taking half the press conference after he beat Florida State in the Orange Bowl a few years ago, and half the press conference had nothing to do with Georgia.
Yeah,
the fact that Florida State didn't show up with any players.
Yeah, and really how it was a shell of the team. And I mean, you're now getting you go back to that Penn State and Clemson. I mean, you even look at Penn State's coaching staff. You didn't even have the head man there like that.
Right.
You didn't have James Franklin. You had
no.
So at least Clemson still had Dabo.
Right.
I guess depending on what Clemson.
For what that paid, for what that worked out for him.
Yeah. So it's an unrecognizable product when you get to those points now.
My beef and my beef was USF played ODU. Now, let me just say from the jump, right? That's not a game that's going to make a difference to anybody who didn't go to either one of those schools, all right? That's just the way it is. But the announcers kept saying, this high-powered USF offense. Well, the starting quarterback, the starting wide receivers, and the starting running backs didn't play in the game.
Yeah.
The guy who started at quarterback had not started a game in his collegiate career.
Yeah. And
so if you're the announcers going, look at what ODU is doing. By the way, for ODU, their starting quarterbacks didn't start the game.
Yeah, and to be honest, on top of that, on top of all of this, is the guys in the booth, the announcers, the crews working
Mhm.
these games. Those have to be impossible games to cover,
Yeah.
like impossible.
You,
Because I mean, I
yeah.
love the sport of college football. I try to know as much as I can about it.
Mhm.
I, for the life of me, could not tell you a single thing about Old Dominion's backup quarterback going into that game.
I don't. I mean, I follow USF. You know that,
Mm-hmm.
and God love it. I knew the guy's name. I knew the guy's jersey. I knew the one play that he made in the season was a fake punt when he came in and threw a pass for a touchdown. That was his one play. As I said, he didn't start a game
Mm-hmm.
uh, in his college career, and that's no slam on the kid. I mean, it's not. These kids, God love them. They get to play a game. You can't blame them.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for those guys.
Yeah. So and the kid from ODU did a fine job of
Mm-hmm.
of affording himself. But how long are I mean this is one of the how long is the NIT and the bowl system as we know it going to put up with this kind of second tier quality product um, because of the state of college sports at this point in time?
Yeah, and it's something where, just mentioned, it's a really good opportunity for those kids that may not otherwise be getting that opportunity on
Hmm.
that stage.
Right.
But outside of that, when you look at it from a fan engagement and a business model, it's not something that's sustainable for these tournaments and these bowl games.
Well, no, because corporations are not paying, for substandard play.
Yep.
Uh, they, as much as they, sink cash into this, it's not. I mean, it's hard enough to begin with. If you're the Birmingham Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard enough to sell tickets to the game like that. And
Yeah.
Birmingham is, there's not shit. There's no shade on Birmingham. I mean, Birmingham's a hell of a college town, right? I mean,
Yep.
if there's an Alabama team or an Auburn team or somebody like that, they're going to be there. But it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be at the Birmingham Bowl. Uh,
Yep.
so it's hard to sell tickets, So that's under the best of circumstances. If I
Mm-hmm.
know that the teams are coming and the teams are coming that are that are coming there aren't, you know, top notch players aren't with the team, why am I going?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I'm
It's
ESPN,
just
who owns these bowls, what happens now? Are we going to
yeah.
start cutting back of bowls?
Yeah, and you're also in a situation now where you're talking about and this is just kind of getting into the weeds of it, but when you're talking about getting fans there, like Old Dominion had to travel to play USF. Those fans would
Mhm.
have to travel to,
Right?
to watch Old Dominion play USF.
Uh-huh.
That's a tough draw. I mean, I'd say Old
7 hour
Dominion.
drive.
Yeah, Old Dominion, with all due respect, they don't do a great job of drawing fans into their home stadium all the time.
Hmm.
It's an even tougher ask to ask them to drive, to watch them play the UAB backups in a bowl game.
Yeah, I've long been an advocate. Not that it makes any difference that I'm an advocate for it. That if you're going to play these games, make one of the teams a regional team that's within 100 miles of the stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, USF, there's a bowl game, the Gasparilla Bowl, and they could have gone and played at their own. Yeah, it's their home stadium, but it's still an NFL stadium, so it's really not their home stadium. Uh,
Hmm.
would they have played in front of uh, you know, a crowd that was, more, uh, to their liking? I'm absolutely certain they would. Okay,
Yep.
but at least you'd have sold tickets.
Yeah.
They had one game. I mean, they had a UCF Florida game at the Gasparilla Bowl a couple years ago, and they sold it out.
Yeah, and
You know,
it's
so why are you dragging, Old Dominion out of, out of Virginia when you have a bowl, the military bowl, which is in DC, which, that's a nice, easy trip for ODU people. You know,
mhm.
they could have played Navy in that bowl game. Navy could have been the host of the bowl game. I think that sometimes, when they slot these things, you're wondering why in God's name are you having these two teams who only the two teams fan bases care about travel to that, and those are usually the off-brand bowls. And even we're getting even down to some of the. I mean, we're looking at the Gator Bowl, which used to be a major bowl. We're looking at the Pop Tarts Bowl, which used to be the Citrus Bowl. We're looking at a number of bowl games that used to be Hot Bowl, for that matter. Used to be those were all important bowl games,
Yeah,
and now they're just shells of their own, what they used to be. Now you got the Orange Bowl being played at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
yeah, yeah. That's and it's tough because you see the downfall of these great bowls. And I mean, I think the Pop Tarts Bowl is a little bit different only because they've done such a good job with their marketing.
They have.
Um,
I'll give
and
them credit, tremendous credit for that.
yeah, they've done that, but even when they've done that, you tune in, you look at this crowd, and it's still not what you'd love to see if you're these Pop Tarts Bowl representatives, and if you're really the people at Pop Tarts that are backing this bowl game.
Right.
So it's for as good as they've done, it still doesn't feel good enough given the circumstances of what we have now.
No, and prior to that, by the way, um, prior to the Pop Tarts, it was the Cheez-Its Bowl, and
Mhm.
and I know that I had a lot of friends that would go, went to the game over there when it was cheap. And both the Pop Tarts Bowl and the Cheez-Its Bowl, you go in and there's people in the parking lot giving you Pop Tarts, giving you these massive bags of Cheetos. They just make it fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if you do make the trip, at least you're getting something. You're having a fun experience.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's it. And I feel bad again for those kids who go and they play. As I say, they should not be held accountable for what happened. But when you've got coaches that are on the move, when you got players that are on the move, when you got players like Cam Ward played half of a game with Miami a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and you got that situation. You got the guys that were first string who they've actually suited up, but they're not playing. And
Mhm.
bench, and I'm like thinking to myself, why do you do this? Why do you let them even come? If
Yeah.
they're not going to play, then why? That's not fair to me.
No.
It's like if if you're going to come and suit up, then play.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm
Absolutely.
old school about that. I don't care. You committed to me for this year. Play for me this year, and this year counts the bowl game.
Yeah, and that's where you get into those when you start having contracts with these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to be contracts that are enforceable. I think is a big thing as well. But when you have contracts with these guys, that's when you can start maybe potentially having these bowl games and having this revival because maybe you ink them to this is you are through this season and this season counts the postseason too.
Right.
So if you sign up for that, then you're signing on for the bowl games as well.
Well, I also talked to a couple of people who sponsor bowl games, and we'll finish up with this. But there was a talk about, well, maybe the bowl games could pay the players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of the sponsors tell me, I spend a lot of money on this bowl game every year, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
make money off of it. Okay, yes, I put money into the TV. Yes, does ESPN give me, a great deal of promotion? Absolutely. But I'm not going to give them any more money to pay players. I mean, that's not the deal. The deal is
Yeah.
sponsoring the bowl game.
Yep.
So, I have a feeling that we're going to see less bowl games because unless they can get that contract put together where the player gets, has to finish out that season, that to me is the only way it's going to work. And if not, I think a lot of these bowl games are going to go away.
Yeah, and I will also add this is I don't think that some bowl games going away is the worst thing in the world because
No.
people talk about the dying of the bowl games and how the bowl games have been diminished, and a lot of that has to do with the playoff and the emphasis on the playoff and how you've now been told if you don't make the playoff, really your season's kind of a failure, and that's the way fans are geared to think. But there's also been an oversaturation, just because there's been a lot of new bowls introduced over the past decade, like a
Hmm.
lot in terms of just numbers. So there's also just honestly a few too many bowl games at this point.
When I was in started covering bowl games back in college, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, it was just when the Big Ten and the Pac, at that point, the Pac 8, wasn't even the Pac 10 yet. Um, they didn't allow the only game that you were allowed to play in was the champion of the Big Ten and the champion of the Pac played in the Rose Bowl. That was it. If you were,
Mm-hmm.
if you, didn't matter if Michigan finished second in the country. If they didn't win if they wouldn't win a championship, they didn't go to a bowl game.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until the Big Ten started allowing teams to get into bowls that we saw expansion of bowl games. There used to
Mm-hmm.
be about 10, and then it went to about 20, and now I think it's at 32 or 33. I agree with you. There's way too many bowl games, but it's
Yeah.
programming for ESPN,
Yeah.
and
And
that's how they look at it. And if you're a 6-6 team, and they're now even having trouble finding that because some years there's not even 6-6 teams.
yeah,
There's
that
been
that
a
was
couple of
the
seasons when they put 5-7 teams into the mix.
that was going to be the thing that I pointed to is that now they can't even get 6-1, like the 6 wins. Yes, it's a requirement, but now they're going past that now to where we're asking these 5-7 teams. And God, there's some of these 5-7 teams that are just telling them no.
Well, why would you? I mean, there's no. I remember Dan Mullen was, I think, his first year at Mississippi State. I was talking to him on an interview, and I said, "Were you surprised that you got asked to a bowl game?" Because yeah, I was. As a matter of fact, I had booked a vacation with the family after the season, and yeah, so I was very surprised that we got invited, and and the athletic department obviously accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it's something where you're also talking about the timing of these bowl games and these 5-7 teams. They're saying
Mhm.
no. A lot of them they're out for Christmas break.
Yep.
They've broken already. They're not going to call their team back in and say, "Hey guys, come on, let's go down to Birmingham and play in the Birmingham Bowl. You guys are going to love it."
Yeah, you know, and again, no slight on Birmingham, and they try. Look, all of these bowls do their best to try to make. I mean, they have barbecues, they have all kinds of things for the team and for the fans. So I mean, I don't want people out there thinking I'm hating on bowl games. I'm not. I'm over my career. I made a lot of money off of bowl games, so I'm not biting the hand that feeds me in that regard. But there's an oversaturation of everything. You know,
Yep.
and as much as I like the bowl games, as much as I like the NIT, I used to do a lot of NIT games as well. It's, I think we have, if nothing else, we've learned in the last couple years, you know, college sports is not the same and never will be.
No. Nope. Absolutely not.
All right, my friend, let's say goodbye. And final thoughts on tonight's either baseball or hoops.
Yeah, I mean, this is a matchup that if you're the U.S., you absolutely expect to win. And I hate to say it because they've done a really good job to make it this far, given some of the turmoil that they've went through. But Mark DeRosa's tenure of this World Baseball Classic is going to be judged off of this game and this game alone. No one is going to remember that Dominican Republic win if you turn around and lose to Team Venezuela tonight. So this is a game that, although you get to the final and now you're playing for really the gold, and you consider that, well, that should be a success. Nobody will view it as such if they lose this game.
Which, by the way, they could, because Venezuela is not a bad team.
Yeah, I mean, you go look at the line. Venezuela's plus 220. It's not like it's a wide margin by any measure.
Right. So we'll see how it ends up, but we're less than a month. We're less than 2 weeks away from opening day. So we will see what happens tonight, and we'll see what happens in basketball, and we'll be back and talk about all of it tomorrow. So for Matt, I'm Jim. Have a lovely day, guys.